So Miles, we're back at your place. We're back for the gate. We sadly lost that game 35-12. Having been in the game for maybe 52 minutes, it was 7-7 until 52, and unfortunately that got away from us. I don't know what your initial thoughts now that you're at home in the warm.
Yeah, I agree. I thought we were toe to toe with, you could argue, one of the best teams in Europe until 52 minutes, but losing AJ MacGinty at 5-6 minutes into the game, and Janci van Rensburg stepping up into a position which he's, set up to do, but then we were then lacking in the centre, which he's an awesome player at. It was always going to be a tough match, but I'm, pleasantly surprised we hit 52 minutes in parity with with Leinster, but the benches showed the difference in quality, didn't they? Between a Premiership side that has a very reduced salary cap and a European side or Irish side which has a cap which is probably 3-4 times the amount, and it certainly showed, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did highlight a couple of things like that. I mean, it highlighted to me that if we're serious about winning Europe as well as the Premiership, we will have to have a bigger squad. So it will be a miracle if we go anywhere in Europe this year, to be honest. I mean, let's be honest, we've lost to Leinster at home. We've got a 6-day turnaround La Rochelle with half our team on HIAs. It's not looking good. So having said all that, there was a lot of positives from tonight that may be useful for next season. But you're right, how you can't operate at the highest level, lose your fly half after 5 minutes, and basically not have another specialist fly half to take the place. And as you say, I mean, not only was it difficult for Bernard to play in that position, and he struggled a little bit with against the wind, kicking in touch, to be fair to him.
He did.
But at the same time, we then took away our best inside centre. So, and of course, a fly half has a very subtly different sort of game, both in attack and defence. And actually, I think the fact that we were still 7-7 until 52 minutes and essentially won that first half and could well have been more than 7-0 ahead kind of shows how well we played, given those challenges we had. Let's just quickly go back to the first half, because it was a really, really good first half. And as you say, it started badly, losing AJ MacGinty, and when we saw him on the ground, I mean, I think most fans knew that the writing was on the wall. It took so long for him to get up, but then we kind of took the game to them, didn't we? And we soaked in a bit of pressure from them, and then for most of the second part of the first half, we were in their 22, and obviously led to a couple of yellow cards on their behalf, and in a way, I think it was a shame we only really got 7 points from it.
Yeah, I mean, they were potentially, I believe they were 2 men down, weren't they? It's the same 10 minutes of the game. We then subsequently managed to get over the line and score 7 points, but after that, as is the Bristol way, we sadly conceded an immediate try, didn't we, within 2 minutes.
Well, it's a classic case of score and concede.
Oh, absolutely, which is, the Bristol way, as it were. But, we were 7 points apiece, and then I feel like we didn't progress, did we? We didn't push on during that period of their men off the pitch to dominate the game. And that then was a common theme throughout the rest of the game. They pushed hard, they defended a lot better with their 13 men, and got to half time with 7 points apiece, and then it just got worse down the line. Really, you're right. I think I was really pleasantly surprised that we got to half time, and Leinster didn't really appear to break our defence at all. They did that, cheeky sort of 7-pointer as soon as we scored. But with AJ off and Yancey stepping up, we did brilliantly. Our defence was great. Our attacking, we tried to play the Bears' way. They knew their defence was extremely good. It wasn't like playing a Quins of last game. Their rush defence was, sublime, and we just couldn't break their line. Apart from that one sort of, you could argue, lucky try towards halfway.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real shame. I think you're rightly so. A couple of things came out that first half. Number one, our defence was absolutely rock solid. They couldn't find a way through, and
No.
they tried everything. They tried to punch holes in it. They kicked, and we defended everything that was thrown at us. And I think on that point, I should say someone like Fitz again had an amazing game. It really is. I genuinely think he's the best number 8 in England in terms of what he does, both in defence and attack. Played a full 80 as well. But yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating. I guess our red zone efficiency just wasn't as good as theirs. They basically got into our 22 after we scored and then immediately scored it. It's like Ian Madigan said when we spoke to him last week, was that if Leinster get into your 22, the problem you've got is they're going to get something. And unfortunately, they got 7. I mean, I know there was a penalty coming and then Prendergast kind of chipped it over towards Rich Lane, who kind of tried to slide in and catch it and kind of bounced it up into their guys' hands. I mean, we knew a penalty was coming, but if the penalty goes back, at least there's a chance of defending it. And I now think it's really easy for me to say what he should have done, but in a way, he should have just booted it, half volleyed it out into touch or something like that, just to get it. It was unfortunate, but it was, they had 13 men when they scored, and you're never going to win big games if you don't make the most of your advantage. And then really I suspect what happened is they went into their changing room at half time thinking, boys, we're in a massive game here. These guys they're fearless. They're playing without fear. They're defending without fear. They're attacking without fear. They are pushing us to the limits. We've really got up the game, and it was fairly obvious after half time that not only did they up the game a little bit, that when of course they brought on their insane bench. I mean, they started with Geordie Barrett at half time. And then they brought Sneijman, Caelan Doris, Andrew Porter on, a few minutes later, and it's ridiculous, really. I got to say though, one thing that I think was a massive turning point wasn't necessarily just that bench that came on, but was that bizarre double yellow card that the ref gave to both the props, so Laheath and Porter. I mean, Porter came on, gave away a penalty, and they got yellow carded, and that was it. Welcome to Bear Country. But it was a weird thing. He sent off both the props, so then both teams had to bring on new props, and then had to decide who to sacrifice. So Leinster sacrificed Jack Conan, so they took a forward off, and Bristol sacrificed Ravovo. So completely different strategy. And of course, I guess our strategy was, We'll keep it tight for a bit, and I think we got a line out. We had a rolling maul, and then we lost possession. And then, of course, when we lose possession, we're in trouble because they got one more in the back line.
They did,
and ironically, they go and score two tries. I think Prendergast and then Geordie Barrett scored, and then of course at the same time they had Doris and then they had Doris on, and then they had Van der Fly who'd been on the whole time. So you're talking a back row of Van der Fly and Doris. Got Geordie Barrett in the back. Sam Prendergast, who I thought had a great game, kind of upped his game a bit. I think the fact that we weathered the storm really a little bit and only conceded 35 points and managed to score at the end was actually massive credit to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the bigger picture, you're absolutely right. The Leinsters of this world, they've half the squad is Irish internationals, as we have hinted. The salary cap is huge, massive compared to the Premiership side, and then in addition to that, they've signed an All Black who they just bring in, and you might say that Geordie Barrett was on the bench. They brought him on in a floating position amongst the backs, but he just showed his quality. He scored a try. He flipped up and scored, and allowed another try. That is just the quality he brings, and we're just haven't just got the depth, really. We can face up to, fantastic Premiership sides, and we've learnt now this season to sort of play the Bristol Bears way. But if we're going to compete in Europe, I fear that any English side now this season, looking over the whole weekend potentially, is not going to progress past even the quarter or the semi-finals. We just have not got the depth in squads, in English rugby, in money or talent, to beat the likes of Leinster. I mean, they're runners-up in the last 3 years. They're championship winners. It's absolutely brilliant that you go to Ashton Gate, as we tonight, and you see half the Ireland squad coming, and that's the first time we've seen these such big names play at Ashton Gate in the European Cup, and it's brilliant. That's what fans we wanted. That's what Pat wanted. That's what the squad wanted. That's why we are at the top level in the Champions Cup. But it's just another level in which we just didn't quite on the night, 52 minutes plus, have the oomph to get over the line.
Yeah, I mean, some people might point out to the fact that Northampton beat Munster last year, and Harlequins went to Bordeaux and beat them. But I think that was just moments. That was one-off things. I think you're right. English clubs are going to struggle in Europe, and I think our biggest problem now is that we don't want a repeat of what happened last year, where we end up going out in both cups in one game.
In one night.
And we don't end up in anything. I mean, I know it sounds a bit depressing, but I think realistically now we're probably looking at having a little go at the Challenge Cup, and that's pretty, that's a very early prediction. But having said all that, got to focus on the positives, because there were a lot of positives.
Oh, absolutely.
And given the context of what we've said, I think a lot of people came away from that game saying that Leinster knew they were in a game. I think we spoke to a few Leinster fans afterwards, and they were very positive about the whole experience, about coming to Ashton Gate. And one guy said, Bristol is his second favourite team, because they knew how he wanted to play, and the fact that we didn't compromise on that game plan showed. Like, you remember a few years ago when we moaned about the fact we always tried to change our game plan when Saracens came to try and play like Saracens did, and it never worked. I think that's such a sea change this season, is we have our own game plan and we follow it through. And for 55 minutes, it worked tonight. And if we had not lost AJ MacGinty, and if we had a proper backup fly half, who knows what might have happened. So I think we have to be really positive about it. And again, people like James Dunn, Joe Owen, Jack Bates, Rich Lane, they all stepped up against these serious players. So it was kind of 15,000. It's a shame.
Thereabouts.
I mean, it is a shame. We've got a 27,000 seater stadium.
Yeah.
And we get scheduled on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. But I still think, could they have done more to get more people there? Could they have given away a load of free tickets, or given away £10 tickets to the Atio just to get more atmosphere?
I agree.
Just to even give kids the opportunity to see some of these amazing players. Yeah. I mean, some of us can't afford to go to World Cups, or go to Twickenham for Autumn International, so we don't get to see the likes of Geordie Barrett or Caelan Doris that often. So I just do wonder whether we could have done a bit more to try and fill a few gaps. But I don't want to be negative. I think it showed us that we are at the top table. We deserve to be. I suspect that, given the fact we're going to be bolstering the squad next season with Rubiolo, we've signed Tom Jordan.
Yeah.
And I think people like Jack Bates, Rich Lane, Joe Jenkins, James Dunn, Joe Owen, and Fitz Harding, to be honest, they know they can compete at this level, and in a year's time they're going to be a year stronger, a year more experienced. So I now think that actually our real reality is, if we're going to make a real assault on the Champions Cup, it's probably going to be next year.
Yeah, I agree.
And because in a way what we did tonight is we played our game plan against a team that was a notch up from Harlequins, and it actually showed that you're going to have to be a little bit smarter and a little bit cleverer about how to use it. And of course, we've got to say the conditions didn't help either. That's not going to help. We probably didn't appreciate that where we were sat.
Yeah, it was flipping cold, wet and windy, wasn't it? We were playing against the wind in the first half, Bernard had to sort of, kick on his right foot to some left-handed
but he was trying
kicks.
to. He was trying to slice it from the right-hand side with his right foot. I said to you all the way through, why is Rich Lane not taking it with a left footer?
I don't get that.
That was a bit odd. It felt as though there was a bit of no one quite knew what to do in that situation. And I mean, the poor bloke, he was trying to kind of spin it sideways off at the outside of his boot.
You're right. We were trying to play the Bristol Bears way, the way we played last Friday against Quins, and it came off against a team that don't play the way Harlequins do. We were having to adapt somewhat, kick it somewhat. I mean, Prendergast, was just great, wasn't he? They're number 10. He's such a young lad. His sort of kicks, some of them were a bit iffy, but he was pretty much, I thought, player of the match. But he was doing some great kicks down. We were having to defend, run from long period, run from the back in the 22 into a great defence that we're not penetrating at all, and it's just not the way we play. You could have argued we had to try and adapt against a European and Ireland side, kicking over the top, but nothing was really working, and that's just a testament, really. We've been there, we tried it, and we know what we need to do potentially next season with a different squad. If we're going to face these big European sides, it's not Premiership, and the style of play potentially has to just alter somewhat on the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thought of going to La Rochelle next Saturday, but as Pat said in his post-match interview, he said, he kind of snorted and laughed when he said, "Oh, we got a 6 day to La Rochelle," but then he also said, this is where we got to be. Yeah. We have to be here, and we have to experience this, and with a better squad, who knows? But actually, a couple of people had put some stuff on Twitter actually before, just to finish off, is there is an argument to say that we might need to buy in an emergency fly half for the next month. Yeah. And again, it comes back to our little thoughts about DMAC, end of the season, New Zealand, offer him a bit of cash for a month, say come over to Europe for a month. Damien McKenzie, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, he's the sort of player that would slot in quite quickly. But seriously, if AJ's on an HIA for a week or two, we haven't really got any options.
He's going to be missing La Rochelle next season.
We can't go to
next week. Sorry, for sure.
We can't go to La Rochelle without a recognised 10. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
But we don't know how far off Worsley is from coming back. But he's injured as well.
But we can't even go to La Rochelle with
an out-and-out number 10.
With even 110, we need to go with 2 10s.
But how do we turn that around?
Well, I don't know.
A loan signing inside of a 6 day turnaround.
Well, I'll tell you what you do is you get on the phone. The Black Pat will be on the blower tomorrow, and he'll have his checkbook out, and it'll be a very simple conversation. It's like, we need you. This is how much it's going to cost. Job done.
Yeah. Can you fly in on Monday? We just need to analyse the game and get you in playing for Saturday.
And to coin a phrase, it's going to have to be someone who's oven ready. And who knows? Who knows?
There's a few ex-Bristol players who potentially are oven ready, but they potentially, signed for other clubs, haven't they? Of late.
No, this is the problem. I mean, if they're in contract, what can we do? It's I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking Caleb Muntz. He's with the Drua. I can't. They're not playing at the moment, so
it's almost a shame.
Are you allowed to buy someone out of their contract?
It's almost a shame that Tiff Eden signed that little short-term contract with Saracens.
Good point, Tiff Eden.
Who knew the Bristol game?
Could have done a job for us, couldn't he?
Anyway, we will see the team sheet on Friday. For the away leg at La Rochelle next week. We wish fans well who are planning on travelling to La Rochelle next week. It's not the easiest to get to, so hats off to those who are making the efforts.
On that note, away fans, it was great to see all the Leinster fans with Leinster flags. Because as soon as they scored, obviously it took a long time for those flags to be shown, but when those flags came up, and it made me think, like, big game like that. Why didn't we have any flags? Why couldn't we have some flags under the chairs?
Moons ago, I don't know if it's a cost-saving measure, but many moons ago there were flags on every seat on big games. Yeah. This is our first big European campaign of the season, why didn't they make
like
the effort
hoop
with the
flags.
new? No, maybe not the kit for the European game, the red on the black.
Yeah, we could have had
in every single seat.
I know it's.
I feel like French teams would have done that. But
we had quite a good light show. Yeah, we had a good light show, but it was almost like they outdid us as a way. They obviously were quite coordinated. They'd obviously decided all to have them.
Absolutely.
But just a thought, and at 15,000, a little bit disappointing, but that's still 15,000 people technically that were there, which isn't a bad. That's still not bad for a Sunday night on a rainy, windy night in BS3. So, mate, you just yawned there. Yeah, it's getting a bit late. I think it's not been it's not a long pod, but we felt that we ought to put something out, and I'm sure, if only just for a few people, just to listen and relive their own thoughts of the game.
Something to do on a Monday morning.
Yeah, and I can't apologise. Not many gags, not many belly laughs.
No bell in the house.
But I feel kind of excited about the fact that I've actually seen some proper international players in the flesh that I don't get to see because I can't afford to go to Twickenham, or I haven't got the time or the money to go to World Cup. So I'll cherish that. I'll also cherish the fact that I believe that Fitz Harding is the best number 8 in the country. If people don't start talking about him at England level, then the game's gone.
Yeah.
What an absolute legend. So, and also one other thing I'd like to say, it was great to see Harry coming back. He's been away with England for God knows how long. He's probably box kicking, boring structure. The way in that first half, the way he was skipping over players to get to the ruck, he was obviously he was loving it because he hasn't done any of that for the last month. So it was great to see Harry back. Great to see him giving his effort, giving his all, skipping over bodies. The only other thing I'd mention is the ref. I mean, we were quite pleased with the ref in the first half because he gave us a lot of penalties. But as I said to someone, he was a bit like a kind of Mr. Bean character. I'm sure it was because he's French and obviously obviously not many of the players could speak, but he was really overemphasising a lot of his decisions with hand signals.
His hand gestures were out of this world.
But he kind of strutted around, and then the two linos just didn't look that they were right they both in tights, and they both sort of seemed a little bit unathletic. But we got to play these. Got to play these things. We did actually see the ref as he left through the sports bar, and I gave him a little merci au revoir. And he seemed quite happy. He seemed quite happy that he got. At the end of the day, the boys have got to do a job.
Well, absolutely. In France next week we'll probably get an international
who knows?
of a different calibre, won't we? We'll see.
And in the first half, he did all right for us. So I think on that note, the Mr. Bean-esque French ref is a nice place to finish this podcast. So
say au revoir.
Yeah, au revoir. Stay safe. My A-level French is gone. It's too late on a Sunday night. And up the Bears.
Up the Bears.